I'm very pleased to be introducing my Senator Tina Smith to this great group. It's been a great conference, and I know Senator Smith will add a lot to it. Senator Smith has a long and impactful career in Minnesota and on the national stage, including service as Chief of Staff of the Mayor of Minneapolis, so she understands cities and the problems that cities have, as Chief of Staff to Governor Mark Dayton, and then later as the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota as running mate for Mark Dayton. In 20,000, sorry, let's try this again, got my dates wrong, 2018, Senator Smith was appointed to fill the unexpired term of Senator Al Franken, and she ran successfully in the special election in 2018 to become Senator from Minnesota. And then in 2020, she ran again for a full term and now is serving in that term representing her state. Senator Smith has been a long-standing champion of many issues that I think all of us are concerned about. She's championed women's rights, access to choice. She's a strong environmentalist and has worked tirelessly to try to prevent climate change. And most importantly, she's a champion for housing and community development. In her position as chair of the Subcommittee on Housing, Transportation, and Community Development, she recently held a hearing at which she announced the introduction of S3441, which I think you've already heard about, the CDFI Bond Guarantee Program Improvement Act of 2022. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my senator, Senator Tina Smith from the great state of Minnesota.
Well, hi, Frank. It's great to see you on the screen. And thank you so much for that very generous introduction and for your long leadership in this field. And thank you also for providing testimony at the hearing that we had not so long ago. I really appreciate it, and it's wonderful to see you. And I also just want to say a big hello and thank you to John Holtzclaw, president of the CDFI Coalition, for your great leadership and support, and also joining us at that subcommittee hearing. Just really appreciate it. And it's great to be able to spend a little bit of time with all of you today, although I wish I could see you all in person. Let me just see if I can, there we go. Just to talk a little bit about kind of where we are with the US economy, really the crucial role that CDFIs have played in pulling us out of the economic crisis of the pandemic, and the role that I see for all of you as and ideas that I have for where we go from here. So to start with, I think it's important to acknowledge that we are experiencing right now a historically strong economic recovery as we emerge from this pandemic. Just last Friday, the monthly jobs report came out showing that it far exceeded expectations. According to official estimates, we had 678,000 new jobs created in February alone, and the unemployment rate has fallen to 3.8% nationally. I think it's a little lower in our home state of Minnesota, Frank. Since January of last year, over 6 million jobs have been over 6 million Americans have gone back to work, and real income for families has gone up. While there is no doubt that rising costs have been a real challenge for families, it's important to realize that real income has gone up, and we're seeing the fastest economic growth since 1984. But we all know this, the COVID-19 pandemic has not been the great equalizer. It has laid bare the disparities in our society that result in historic disparities, long-term disparities that result in Black and Brown and Indigenous families not having the same opportunities and facing significant systemic barriers. And this, of course, didn't start during the pandemic. According to the Federal Reserve, just to give, and you all know this, but I think it helps to root us in why we're doing this work. According to the Federal Reserve, as of 2019, a typical Black family's net worth was just about 15% of a typical white family's net worth. A typical Hispanic family, their net worth was about 19% of that typical white family. And the typical net worth for Native families is also just a fraction of that of white families. So what do we do to right this wrong? What is the job before us? Well, I believe that a significant, a big part of the solution is to expand access to capital and to lending and to financial services for people of color, Native and tribal communities, and in small towns and rural places. And of course, this is where CDFIs come in. During the pandemic, you stepped up to make PPP loans available and to provide financing to communities that have long faced systemic discrimination. You did this on a large scale and in communities that you'd never been able to reach before. It was a phenomenal effort. And because of your connection to communities and because you know the communities that you serve and because of your understanding of what works at the ground level, at the grassroots level, Congress has really looked to CDFIs to get those funds out the door. So your work has been truly impressive over these last couple of years. And just think about it, consider that when the CDFI program was established in 1994, there were about 80, I understand, CDFIs. Today, there are more than 1,000 of you out there with so many innovative models that we couldn't even have imagined when the CDFI fund was established back in the day. So here's what this looks like for my state of Minnesota. And Frank knows this well, for one of the reasons that I have become such a proselytizer for CDFIs is because I've seen what a difference you make in my home state of Minnesota. Here's just a couple of examples. The African Development Center in my home state has developed 2 malls that support 450 African small businesses and over 500 jobs. The Indian Land Capital Company made another example, made a loan of nearly $1 million to the Lower Sioux Indian community. I've been to the Lower Sioux community and I've seen the way that they have put those dollars to work to expand and build out economic development. And another great example in Minnesota is the University Enterprise Labs, right there, nestled up next to the University of Minnesota, funded in part by Sunrise Banks, which is a certified CDFI, which is supporting, they're doing this with support from the New Markets tax credit program. And those funders and funds are building out, helping to expand a cutting edge life sciences innovation incubator right there in Minnesota. These are the kinds of projects that I do not believe would get done without the support and connectivity that CDFIs provide. So here we are, we have what I think is very strong economic growth in the country. We know also that this growth and opportunity won't reach communities that have experienced historic disinvestment and discrimination. That won't happen unless we act purposefully to close that gap. And we also know that CDFIs have the community relationships and the experience and the capacity to close that gap given the opportunity. And I think that is the job before us. So with this in mind, let me just share briefly 3 ideas for what I think that we can do to push bipartisan support for CDFIs and the work that CDFIs are doing. The first is to do the work that I'm working on with Senator Rounds around improving and expanding the CDFI bond guarantee program. Now, Senator Rounds has been a great partner of mine. He is my ranking member on the Housing, Transportation, and Community Development Subcommittee. And in January, Senator Rounds and I introduced this legislation that would update and expand the CDFI bond guarantee program. This program has been very, very successful. It has provided more than $500 million in low interest long-term financing to CDFIs over the last decade, but it only works for larger CDFIs. And so what we want to do with our legislation is to modernize that, change that so that smaller CDFIs can engage in this work as well. That just makes, I think, good sense. I'm grateful for the support that we've gotten for so many of you, and we're going to be doing everything we can to push that legislation forward as we go forward this year. Another area which I'd like to mention is also a collaboration that I have with Senator Rounds, which is working to expand lending on tribal lands. Last year, our subcommittee heard from lenders in South Dakota about a very successful pilot program where the Department of Agriculture has partnered with CDFIs to make mortgage loans on tribal land. As many of you know, this is a complex process because tribal lands are almost always held in trust, making it more difficult to process that mortgage. But this pilot project in South Dakota has worked really well to vastly expand the mortgages that are available to tribal members. So Senator Rounds and I want to take that partnership, that pilot project, and expand it nationally so that Native families can have a shot at a fair shot at home ownership, which, as we know, is a path to wealth building. Finally, the last thing I'd like to just touch on is the need to secure continued predictable funding for CDFI programs. You have a powerful record of success, whether it's the new market tax credits or the capital market fund, magnet fund, pardon me, or the CDFI technical assistance funds. You've shown that you can do so much with those CDFI funds. And I want to make sure that you can count on that as you go forward rather than having the unpredictability of those ups and downs. So I think we have a full agenda of work ahead of us. I want to thank you so much for inviting me to join you for a few minutes, and I look forward to our continued partnership as we work to expand your capacity and your ability to connect with communities at the grassroots level to address these systemic challenges around lack of funding and lack of access to capital and lending. Thanks so much, Frank, and thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Senator Smith. I understand you're willing to take a few questions.
Happy
to.
So
I'll ask for people to use the chat function and ask questions, and I'll try to get as many in front of Senator Smith as possible. Does anyone have questions for Senator Smith?
I understand you're going to have a chance to hear from my colleague, Senator Van Hollen, next, which will be great in his committee work. He is a great advocate for your work also.
Looks like you answered all the questions that people have. I do want to thank you, Senator Smith, for your leadership and your support of what we do as an industry and as citizens of this country. We have a lot of work ahead of us, and it's great to have somebody at our back like you. So on behalf of the coalition, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Take care and have a great rest of your conference. I appreciate you all.